Hi, welcome to SAP UI5 tutorial. So in the last tutorial we were talking about the component. So the component is the standard way of developing the SAP UI component, so which in turn can be configured on Fiori Launchpad. So Fiori Launchpad it's a different stuff. Okay, let's concentrate on the UI5 now. Yeah. So today in this tutorial we are going to discuss the very important concept called as routing. So normally, if you want to navigate from one page to another page, so in the previous tutorial we used something called as nav container to to move to one page to the other page. So, but the standard way of moving from one page to the another page with some data is with the help of routing. Okay, so routing is the one using which we can navigate from one page to another page, so that we can get the data along with the navigation, and in the same way as many as many pages as you can, so you will navigate to those many pages. Okay, so if you have look at this screen over here, so I'm just clicking on this button here in the footer, go to second page. So if you can see here, so this is a button which I'm gonna press, and if you see this the address bar, so now it is only index.html. Oh, sorry. So now let me run this page. Yes, so if you have observed this, so here I have some application which is running, and if you can see here, this is the first page, so which where I am in, and this is an index.html. Obviously, if I click on this go button, so if you can observe this one index, this is the address bar, right? So now I'll click on this, then observe the address bar. So I'm just clicking on go to second page button, and if you can see here, so there is the URL got updated, right? So now when I click on go to third page, so if I click on this, you can see here again the URL got updated. So if I click on go back, so I'm navigating to the same page, a second page, and then on click on back in the second page, so I'm navigating to the first page. So let me click on this, and then so let me take this particular URL. So I'm just copying this URL. Let's say I'm just opening a different tab. Okay, so let me open some incognito window. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll simply click on this. So you can see here I'm just directly navigating to the second page, not to the first page. So that means what? So with the help of routing concept, we can implement something called as URL sharing. Okay, so URL sharing, this, let's say if I share this URL with you, then obviously you will be navigating to the same page with the same state. Okay, so with the help of routing mechanism, we are going to implement something called as URL sharing. So let's see how can we implement this routing. So let me go back to the Eclipse. Okay, so this is what the application which we were working on in the previous tutorial, and here I have so one page. So let me run this application. So let me run this application, run as web app preview. Okay, so it will take some time. Yeah, yes, now the application is up and running. So what I'll do is I'll just simply copy this URL, and I'll go to the browser and then paste it over here. Yeah, so now this is our application. Yeah, so now let's go back to our um, Eclipse. Yeah, so now we have only one page, right? So now we have only one page. So let's recollect once. So now what we discussed in the previous tutorial. So this is the UI component, and we are extending the component, and then we are just giving the metadata of this component. So inside this metadata there is something called as routing. So inside this routing we are giving the configuration of the routing, saying that which type of views we have and where this view is present and what is the container which we have. So if you see this, so this is the ID of the container which is there in this particular app.view.xml, right? So this is again, it is a nav container, so it is a subclass of the nav container, right? So then clear target false, so let's explain this later. So if you don't use this clear target false, then obviously the router mechanism won't work properly. Yeah, so now here routes, so inside these routes we are configuring all the views which we have in our component. So as of now I have only one view, so that is the reason I just configured only one. So this is first page. So let's create a second view. Okay, so let me go to the others, and then select the view. Okay, so here I am going to create second view. It is of type XML, and click on finish. So as we already know, so it will generate one XML file and then corresponding controller. So just change the title to second. Okay, second page. So now whenever we click on this first page, button in the first page. So let's say let's create a button over here. So let me go back to the first page. Okay, let me go back to the first page, and here we need to create a footer, right? So let's create a footer in the first page, and then whenever you click on the first, on this particular button, then obviously we should be navigating to the second page. Okay, so let me create a footer first. Okay, let me come here. So here this is a footer by footer, and I have a toolbar, and inside the toolbar go to inside the toolbar I have something called as button, so which is right aligned, and the text is go to second page, and here I have some function in here. Okay, so what I will do is I'll copy this, and I'm gonna create the same function in first page controller.js. Okay, so let's uncomment all these methods. Okay, let's uncomment. It's not mandatory to uncomment all these methods, but you just and make it uncomment. Okay, so I usually do this. So okay, so I'm gonna create one method in the first controller saying that this is whenever we click on this one, obviously we'll be navigating to the second second page, right? So what I will do is, so in case if you want to navigate to the second controller, then obviously what do we need to have? So we should have a router object. Okay, so with the help of router we are just routing our control to the second one. So in case if you want to get the router, then obviously there is something called as SAPUI core UI component dot get router for this. Okay, so there is a method, so this method will return us the router object. Okay, so SAP UI core UI component dot get router for this. So for this, that means this particular object we are passing, that means it will give us the router object, right? So once you get the router object, so there is something called as now. Okay, now to method on top of the router. So we have to use this particular now to method. Now to we have to use this particular method to navigate to the second page. Okay, so now what is this second page? So we need to configure, we need to say somewhere to the router saying that, so just navigate to this method. So the router cannot understand what is this second page, so somewhere we need to configure that. Where is that? So we have to go to this particular controller file, sorry, component.js, and in there we need to configure the router. Okay, so let me give a comma in here, and then let me configure this. Okay, pattern equals to second page pattern. Okay, pattern, and then name is second page. So if you can see here, this you can give anything. So second page I have given. Okay, and view is name of the view. So here name of the view is SECOND. This is the name of the view. So whenever you click on this, then obviously we will be navigating to this particular container. So here it is saying that, so if you go to this particular first page controller.js, you can see here, so this is the name of the view which we are giving. So then obviously this router, this is the router which has all this configuration which we configured in here. So it will find for this particular name, and then it will navigate to this particular view. Okay, so since the name is matched, it will render this view. Okay, so if you can see here, this is the pattern. So whenever we render this particular second view, so this is the pattern which is gonna update. So let me remove this for the being of time. Okay, so let me remove this, and let me go back to this first one. So what I'll do is I'll just remove this. Okay, so save this and go back to the browser, and then just refresh it, and you can see whenever I click on this, I will be navigating to the second page. No, I'm not navigating to the second page. That means there is some problem. So what is that problem? So let me go back to the Eclipse. Okay, so and in here there is something called as RouteMatched Handler. Okay, so if you can go to the init method, so here we are getting the router, and then we are initializing the router. So for this initializing, there is something called as so before initializing there is something called as a RouteMatched Handler. So you need to give this particular RouteMatched Handler to the router, so then only it will work fine. So in case if you want to configure the RouteMatched Handler for the router, so you can get, so if you can go to the top, so RouteMatched Handler is not there, so let me configure the RouteMatched Handler first. Okay, so there is something called as SAP routing RouteMatched Handler class available. Okay, so I'm just gonna use this class. Okay, so let me configure this one here so that I will get this particular dependency in here. So now I can use this RouteMatched handler to give to this particular router. Okay, so let me go to this init method, and before initializing the router, what I will do is RouteMatched handler. So then I'm just giving the router, and then this particular so once you have this RouteMatched handler, then only it will work fine, right? So once this particular component been destroyed, okay, then you have to destroy the RouteMatched handler what you have created, then you have to destroy the component. Okay, so now save this, and what you do is go back to the browser and then refresh the browser. It's the second page. So see, you can see second page. So let me remove this pattern. Let me go back to this. So this is the first page. Whenever I click on this, so I'm now getting to the second page, right? So now in case if you want to send the data as part of the navigation or along the navigation, then obviously what you have to do is you need to configure some parameters in the pattern. So okay, so in this pattern what I will do is I'm just gonna give some patterns or some variables which will be identified or which will be passed later. Okay, what is that? So this is ID. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll simply give ID. Okay, so then I'll go back to the controller, and in here let me press Ctrl Z. So here, in case if you want to pass this parameter, so then use this particular object. So I'm simply passing some random value from the math. Okay, so here id equals to, what is this id? This is the id which I have given over here in this particular component.js. So if you use something AAA, then obviously you should pass AAA over there. Okay, save this. Okay, so now what you do is go back to the browser. Okay, so then remove this pattern and then press it here, and then whenever you click on this, see, now it got updated, right? So now we are passing this particular data. Then how can we access this data inside our um, second view? So how can we access that? So let me go back to the Eclipse. Okay, so let's go back to the second controller. So here, whenever this view got rendered, so every time, so this will execute fine. I mean to say, whenever when the first time view got rendered, then obviously on init method, on before rendering and on after rendering, and on exit won't work, but these three methods will get execute first. So let me put some consoles first. Okay, so in here this is the console. Okay, so then on before rendering also, so we are gonna, it will get execute, and then on after rendering. So in on after rendering also, so let's put one console. Okay, so go here and then paste it here. So what you do is, now let's go back to the browser and then remove all this and click on this. Yes, refresh this, press F12 so that you will open the console, right? So remove this and then make it off and off. Yes, okay. So let me minimize this, and then whenever you click on this, you can see here on init of the second page, on before rendering and on after rendering is getting execute. So what we did before, initializing this particular router, we configured something called as RouteMatched Handler, right? So where is that RouteMatched Handler? So we are going to use this particular RouteMatched handler in here. Okay, so first, in case if you want to use this RouteMatched handler, so let's get the router in the second controller first. I'm in a second controller. I'm just getting the router object using SAPUI core UI component got get router. For this, it will return us the router object of this particular component. So once you get the router objects, then obviously you have to register or you have to attach some method. Whenever the route is matched, you have to attach some method. So how do you attach some method? So each time when the route is matched, so because once the view got loaded, so on init method will be executed only once. So for the first time when the on init method will get execute, okay, so you have to register some method. So that means you have to attach some RouteMatched method. So RouteMatched is it's a callback handler. So when the route is matched, it is going to execute this particular method. Okay, so I'm just registering this particular method on top of a router. Okay, so once you are just registering this particular method, that means what, you have to create this method inside your controller. Okay, how will you create that? So it's a simple function. Okay, so you just create a function like this. So now you try to execute this. So now I kept one more console in here, right? So now what I will do is I'll go back to the browser. Yes, okay, I'll just remove this. Okay, I'm just refreshing the browser so that I'll navigate to the first page, and then let me remove this. Okay, if I click on this, you can see this on this. What is this? Handle route matched second page, right? So this method is getting execute, right? So now if I go back, so if you want to go back, then obviously you should enable the back button in the second page. So to enable the back button, so what do we need to do? Again, we need to modify the XML. So let's go back to the XML and then use something called as show navigation back property, right? So let me go back here and then use this method. Show nav button true, and then whenever user presses on this button, we are going to execute this method. So we need to implement this method. Come over here and then create a function. Okay, function, and then implement this function. So obviously, in case if you want to implement this function, so what in case if you want to go back, then obviously you have to get the router again, and then you will be navigating to the first page, right? So get the router in the same way. Okay, so router dot navigate to first page. So, right, so this is false in the sense it will register. So each and every time when you navigate back, so again it will be considered as a different URL and it will be saved in the history. Okay, let's say if we give a true over here, so the previous URL will be replaced by the current one. Okay, so now let's go back here. Okay, so then refresh this. Okay, so now we are in the first page. So if you can see the console here, so I'm just clicking on this. So for the first time we can navigate to the second page, and then here underscore handle route matched method is executing only once. I'm going back, you can see it is executing once again. If I'm clicking it here, so it is executing again. So that means on init method is not getting executed each and every time when you navigate to the second page. So what is getting execute? Only the method which we registered. See, it is not executing on init method of or on before rendering or on after rendering of the second page. It is executing only the method which we registered. So that is the reason we need to register, because each and every time on init method, on before rendering and on after rendering will not get executed, but we should each and every time when you navigate to a second page, there should be one method which should get executed. So that is the reason we are just registering one method over there. Okay, so let me go back to the Eclipse. Yeah. So yes, so this is the one. So in the second page what we did, we got the router and then we have attached one method and we are implementing this method. So each and every time, let's say if for the first, so as of now we have only one page navigation. So if you have multiple pages of navigation, there are some chances that this method will get executed multiple times. Okay, so for that what we did, what we have to do is we have to use if condition over there. Okay, so once the route is matched, okay, once the route is matched, let's check which route it is. Okay, which route it is. So if this EO event dot get parameter dot route name equal to second page, then only execute this, otherwise don't execute this. So if you can see here, let me put some ABCD, okay, here. So out of this particular if loop, and here this is within the if loop. Okay, so let me save this and let's see the behavior of this. Okay, so let me go back here and then let me remove this one so that I can navigate to the first page. Yeah, so this is what it is, and then if I click on this, if you can see here, this is ABCD and this one, and then if I click on go back, so let me remove this, and if I click on go back, so it is executing ABCD. Yes, now you can observe. So whenever I click on this go back button, so it is executing this particular second page ABCD, but I don't want this to be executed, right? So whenever you go to the first page, the second page method should not get executed, right? So that is the reason we should put one if condition saying that if the user is navigating to the first page, if the user is navigating to the first page, sorry, second page, then only execute this particular method. Otherwise, don't execute. Now see, whenever you navigate to the first page, right? So whenever you navigate back to the first page, it is executing the second one. So let's have a look again, right? So I'll just remove this, and I'm going to the second page. Anyways, this is correct, so it is executing, both are right. So whenever I navigate back to the first page, right, it should not execute the method in the second view, but it still executes. You can see here. So that is the reason what we do is, so we are gonna put some if condition saying that if the root is second page, then only we are gonna execute that condition. That means what? So now I will remove this. Now I will remove this. So now you can see this particular console.log will get print only when the user navigates to the second page, right? So since this method is getting execute by the router, so we need to avoid this particular execution of our logic. So that is the reason. So we are going to put if condition. If this particular route is only second page, then only execute this. Now let's see the the console, right? So let's go here and open both, and then come here and then refresh this so that our code will get update, right? So just click on this, so you can see here on it of second page before rendering, and this one. So since we are navigating to the second page, so this got executed. So now I'm just clicking on back. So if you can see here, so this console is not getting printed, though the method is getting executed. This console is not getting printed because this control is there in a if condition that checks that what the root is. So if the root is second page, then only we are going to execute our logic. So just to avoid this, so instead of writing this if condition, so there is something called as so we can directly match this particular uh, route match method like this. Okay, so we can directly map this particular route like this. So if the router dot get route is second page, then only attach it, then only it will execute this method, right? So now here you no need to write this particular if condition. That means the router will take care of this execution of this method when this particular route is matched. Okay, so let me save this. So now I removed the condition and I commented the previous code. So now I'm just going to this particular index.html, the first page. I'm just refreshing it and open the console and click on here. So click on this, go to page, second page, and you can see here underscore handle root method execute for the first time. So this is an expected behavior. If I click on this one, so it should not execute. Yes, see, it's not executing. If I go back to the second page, then only it will execute. I'm going back again, so it's not executing that method. If I click on go to second page, then only it will execute. See here, right? So this is how we are gonna configure something, and this is gonna configure one method which will get executed when the root is matched. At the same time, so this is how we are going to pass some parameter or some value to the second page, so that we can use this value later in this particular second view, right? So this is how we are going to use the router. So let's create uh, one more route. Okay, so let me go back to the views. Yeah, click one more and click one more view, sorry, create one more view. So then obviously create a view which is like, let's say the name is third view. Okay, third, and XML, it is of type XML, and then here give some name third. Okay, so we created a view called third view, and in the third view we are going to put one more navigation button so that we can navigate back, right? So let's go back to, okay, let's and open this controller, third view controller. Okay, let's uncomment all, right? So the way how we registered a method inside a second controller, in the same way we are gonna register one method in the third controller, saying that when the third root is matched, when the root for this particular view is matched, then execute that method. In case if you want to configure that, let's go back to the second controller, right? Let's copy this particular method, copy this and go back to copy these two lines, yeah, and go to third method and paste it here. So instead of second, it's just give third page. See, the third page is the name of the root, right? So since we created a third page, then obviously we have to register this third page in the router, right? So in case if you want to register this route, then let's copy this, okay, and paste it here. So I don't want to use these parameters now. I'm just give only simple third page. Okay, so this name must be third page because we have given the third page over there. Let's say if you modify something over here, you have to use the same over there, right? Let's say third page 1. Okay, so now you have to give the same third page. Okay, let's configure this first. Third page 1 is the name, and then view name is third, third. Okay, so we have given the view name. Okay, so now let's go back to third page controller. Okay, in the third page controller, so when the third page 1, when the root name is third page 1, so then attach this particular method. Okay, let's create this method over here. Okay, let's create this method, and in here o event, so o event, and let's put one console. Okay, let's put one console, and just this is third page. Okay, and then what you can do is, okay, so anyways we don't have any parameters, so we don't need to do anything, right? So when the user clicks on navigation back, right, when the user clicks on navigation back in the third page, then we have to navigate to the second page. That means we have to implement this method in the third page controller, right? So third page controller, okay, function. So then what you do is, so earlier if you see the second page, okay, if you see the second page in here, I'm just getting the router object, and then I'm just navigating with the help of a router. I'm just navigating back to the first page with the help of a router, but I don't want to do that. So because, so anyways the history is recorded in the history object, so we can use that particular history in the, I mean in the third controller when you navigate to the second controller. So let's see how can we do that. Okay, so in case if you want to get the history object in SAP UI5, there is something called as sap.ui.core.routing.history.get instance. So this will give you the history object. So anyways each and every navigation is recorded in the router or history, so we are getting the history object, and then what we can do is we can get the previous hash. Okay, so we can get the previous hash. Okay, that means the previous URL, and then if the previous URL is not there, we can go one step back in a history. Okay, so this is how we can also go back to the previous page. Okay, so let me go back here to the third page. Anyways, fine. So now what we have to do is, so in the second page we need to implement the logic using which we can go to the third page, right? So for that, obviously let's create a footer. Yeah, let's create a footer saying that go to third page, and then I'm just giving a type of button is emphasized, so that the color is it will render the color, so it will render the button in blue color. Yeah, so then, so when the user clicks on this particular button, so we're going to execute this particular method. So what is this method? We need to implement this method. So let's go back here. Okay, so let me create a method, sorry. Okay, so let me create a method, the dot function. Okay, so this is supposed to be a function. Let me wait, let's wait. So it's a function, so then again in this particular function we have to get the router object, right? We have to get the router object. Using router object we can navigate to the third page. So third page is what? This is a third page 1, right? So let's go back to the component, and here the name is third page 1. So go back to your second controller, so give the name of the route is third page 1. So when the route is third page 1, sorry, whenever the user clicks on that particular button, so we are going navigating to this particular route. So what is this route? So this route is configured in here. This route is this particular view. So this is the view for that pattern is the third page. That means this particular value will be updated in the address bar. Yes, okay, fine. So let me go back to the second page. Yeah, controller. Yeah, this is how we are going to implement. So whenever user clicks on this, so we are navigating to the third page, so the third controller will get execute. So we are getting the router, and then we are registering this particular method. That means we are um, let's say we are just attaching this method when the route is matched, and when the route is matched, this method will get executed. In this method we are just simply putting on console. So when the user clicks on navigation back button on third page, then obviously this logic will execute. In this logic we are getting the history object. From the history we are getting the previous hash. So if the previous hash is there, then obviously let's go back to that particular hash. Okay, so let's go back to your browser and then refresh the browser and with only the HTML. Yes. Okay, so let's remove this console.logs. Okay, good. Now let's click on this. So now I am navigating to the second page, so that underscore handle route match method in the second page got executed, and also all these lifecycle methods of the second page. And then whenever I click on this go to third page button in the second page, then obviously we'll be navigating to the third page accordingly. The third page lifecycle methods get execute along with the route matched method. You can see here this route matched method. Okay, so let's go back. So whenever I click on go back, so it will execute the underscore handle route method underscore handle route matched method of second page, right? So let me click on back button. Yes, so you can see here it is executing underscore route matched method of the second page. So now again if I click on this one, so it's supposed to execute this. It will execute if we would have configured this particular handle route matched method in the first page. So since we did not configure that, so it's not it's not again giving us any console. So if I click on this button again, so you can see this is the second page method, and if I click on this is the third page method, right? So this is how we are gonna implement this particular routing. If you can see here, so whenever you go to the third page, then obviously as we discussed in the in the routing configuration, so what we configured here, this pattern is third page, so that is the reason we can see this third page over here. In case if you want to pass the values to the third page, also you can pass the values. So that means you have to give some parameterized pattern. Okay, so if you give the parameterized pattern, so obviously you can pass the values with the help of this pattern to the third page or to the target page, so that you can get all the values in the target page, and then you can do whatever you want with that particular values. So this is what about the routing. So routing is, this plays very important role whenever you want to share the URL. Okay, so okay, so I forgot to say one more thing. So whenever you go to this component, right, so there is something called as targets. So here I didn't configure any targets, so there is something called as targets. So instead of configuring all these things here, you can move to one more object called targets in here. So the way how we have created routes here. Okay, so targets, we can create a targets object. Okay, inside this target you can give the name to the target. Okay, and then you can configure all these items, and then here you can give let's say target equals to, okay, target. So you can give the name of the target, so that whenever the route is matched, so this particular target will be picked up, and then it will execute all these things. So I'm not concentrating on this now. So in case if you want to learn targets, so just google it and then you can learn it. Okay, so it's very handy. Yes, so this is the basic concepts of routing, and yes, so in case if you have any doubts, please google it, and you can get to know all the things. Yeah, thanks for watching. So let's meet in the next tutorial.